Hello, in this video I'm going to show you how to use the Perspective Grid tool in Illustrator to create your perspective drawings. I'm going to show you the 2-point perspective, and then you can use that information to do your 1-point perspective drawing. So in Illustrator, if you go up to View and scroll down to Perspective Grid 2-point perspective normal, it will bring up a grid that will help you do a 2-point perspective drawing. You can see that there's a 1-point perspective option and 3-point. We're not going to worry about 3-point, but that's where you find your 1-point perspective grid. So if I click on this, it will bring up this perspective grid here. Now, once you're in there, you can play around with the grid and alter it depending on what you want to do. So I'll show you how to do that. You go over to the side here and select this tool here, the Perspective Grid tool, and that will, you can see now it's brought up these handles and anchor points, and you can move those around however you like. So you can play around with the size of the grid. You can use this point here to move your horizon line, and then these handles here will move the actual grid faces. The other thing you can do is you can go up here and you can select which face of the grid is going to be active. So if I choose this one, when I drag my 5 in, it's going to land on that plane. You can swap it to any one of those. I'm going to use the orange one today. Alright, so to bring my number 5 into the grid, I need to select the Perspective Selection tool. If you don't have this tool selected, it will not work. Alright, so I've got some copies of my front view from my orthogonal drawing. I'm just going to click on that. First I'm going to go in and go Object Group. For whatever reason it's separating my lines. And then if I go back here to my Perspective Selection tool, I should be able to click on it and drag it into my perspective grid so that it's now converted it to 2-point perspective. So there's a couple of ways that you can finish your drawing. You can either draw in lines to your vanishing point and convert this to fit within it. So if I wanted to do it that way, I would come here, I would draw a line from the widest point to my vanishing point. I would go up here to View, hide my perspective grid, and then essentially copy and paste this, place it, remembering that with perspective drawing it's really about your judgment. There are rules, you obviously have to use the vanishing points, etc., but when it comes to this kind of thing, it really comes down to you judging how it looks correct. So proportionately in terms of the depth, that's up to you to judge. And then I would turn these two into guides. Try again. Turn those into guides, and I would trace them to create my 2-point perspective drawing. The other way that you can do it is to get rid of those, is to go into my perspective grid again, and then I can, using my perspective grid tool, move this plane and with the Perspective Selection tool I can bring another version in and place it on the plane and then use that to create my 2-point perspective drawing. So essentially pretty much the same thing, whichever you find easier is fine. So if I get rid of hide my grid, I'm going to draw a line from there to there. So you can see I've sort of changed the vanishing point in this version. And then I'll turn those into guides. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. And then I'm going to use my pen tool to trace the details of my 2-point perspective drawing. Okay, so if I click off there now, I think I've made sure I've got all the lines I needed to get. I'll turn off my guides. And you can see that I've accurately drawn a 2-point perspective 5. Okay, so same deal with 1-point perspective. The grid is slightly different. I'll quickly show it to you. Let's move that. Object, group. I'll move it out of the way. In this version, I would bring my 5 into the front there, and then I would move this section back, and I'd put another 5 back here, and then I would join them together in exactly the same way. I hope that makes sense. If you have any problems, please don't hesitate to email me.